Hooey! Greetings! I am Tad Larkin, the lore master of Manda-LORE, and today I'll be digging through the archives to analyze the tactics and the history of the Battle of Kothlis.
Your meeting with the Emperor went well as planned, Prince Shizor?
Of course. I promised 300 ships for His Majesty's construction project on Endor. I bowed and scraped to every one of Lord Vader's demands. They couldn't have found a more amenable business partner.
Or a more dangerous enemy.
You've informed Jabba's bounty hunters that Lord Vader's order to capture Luke Skywalker alive has now been changed?
Yes. And no one will know that the new order to kill Skywalker came from you.
Excellent. My hand must not be detected in this. Vader will surely suffer the Emperor's wrath when he fails to deliver Skywalker alive, as promised. With both of them out of our way, and the Emperor's growing dependence on Black Sun's substantial resources, there is no limit to the power I will attain.
It's the height of the Galactic Civil War, and mere months earlier, the Rebel Alliance had suffered a major defeat at the hands of the Galactic Empire at their former HQ on Hoth. However, this would not be the end of the rebellion. As various elements from Hoth regrouped with the main Alliance fleet, Luke Skywalker, Leia Organa, Lando Calrissian, Chewbacca, and the droids began their plight to save Han Solo, now encapsulated in a slab of carbonite from the fearsome bounty hunter Boba Fett, who himself was being waylaid by rival bounty hunters, delaying him from delivering Solo to Jabba the Hutt on Tatooine. Meanwhile, in the 3.5 galactic standard years since the first Death Star was destroyed at Yavin 4, significant progress had been made on a second Death Star battle station. One far larger, more powerful, and more heavily defended than its predecessor. And as it neared completion over the forest moon of Endor, Emperor Palpatine grew more and more impatient. With the rebels now employing a stateless strategy and conducting hit-and-run raids with and detached from the main Alliance fleet, the Emperor knew that the only way to completely wipe out the rebellion was to lure their entire fleet into a trap and eliminate them with overwhelming force. Using the Death Star 2, he planned to deliberately allow the plans for it to fall into rebel hands, leading them to Endor, where they would discover that the still under construction battle station was very much operational, and would be destroyed with fire from the super laser, as well as Darth Vader's Imperial fleet. To accomplish this, the Emperor enlisted the help of Prince Shizor, head of the Black Sun crime syndicate, as well as one of the largest shipping companies within the Empire, who happily obliged, seeing as he was currently competing for the Emperor's favor with Vader himself. The plans were loaded onto the Saprosa, a MB-C1 class medium transport with nothing but fertilizer on its cargo manifest, and the Bothan Spynet, which was known to have rebel sympathies, was tipped off by agents working for Black Sun, who at this point weren't known to have ties with the Empire. Spymaster Koth Malan attempted to get into contact with Leia Organa, but as she was currently attempting to meet with Shizor himself, Luke Skywalker was authorized to accept the transmission. Commander Skywalker, with the aid of the smuggler Rendar, led a squadron of 12 Bothans, flying BTL-S3 Y-Wing bombers to intercept the Saprosa in orbit above Bothui, where, after suffering the loss of half the squadron, the Saprosa's engines were finally disabled and it was boarded. The computer core containing what they would later find to be the Death Star 2 plans was brought to a facility on Kothlis, a Bothan colony within Bothan space where they possessed the necessary facilities to decrypt the core without triggering its self-destruct failsafe. Unfortunately, the decryption wasn't able to be completed, as the facility was raided by Barabel bounty hunters looking to claim one of 2 bounties put on Skywalker. Fortunately, though, the core was able to be transported to the CR-90 corvette Razor in orbit above the planet. Just before Razor could get underway, an Imperial 1 class Star Destroyer, Motivator, entered the system, and after a brief chase, Razor was locked in its tractor beam, not before another Rebel task force entered the system to come to its aid. Piloting one of the new B-Wing heavy assault fighters, Commander Wedge Antilles led Rogue Squadron and the Nebulon B frigate Redemption to try to wrestle the Razor from Motivator's grasp. Redemption moved into attack range to engage Motivator. Meanwhile, Motivator deployed several squadrons of TIE fighters to harass the enemy frigate. While Rogue Squadron and the other fighters fended off the TIEs, Antilles made an attack run on the destroyer's shield generators, and once the shields were down, he made a run on the command bridge itself. Disabled and bridgeless, the Motivator plummeted to Kothless's surface. One problem remained, however. The Razor had already been captured, and the rebels still had to retrieve the computer core containing the top-secret data. On Kothless's surface, those who survived the crash set up a defensive perimeter on a nearby beachhead to deter any rebel forces that may attempt to infiltrate the wreckage and retrieve the prized computer core. That was exactly the rebels' plan, and as General Crix Madine and a force of 32 rebel commandos made their way to the planet's surface in a Gallifrey GR-75 medium transport, Commander Antilles and the Rogues provided escort, fending off swarms of TIE fighters. With the Rogues' help, the transport made landfall further down the beachhead in an effort to give ground forces ample time to deploy. There was a problem, however. 3 all-terrain armored transports had managed to blast their way out of the wreckage and were headed towards the beachhead to catch the rebels while they were still unloading. To combat this, 3 T-47 airspeeders were unloaded from the transport first, and the Rogues landed their X-Wings to switch craft, with which they would employ the same tactic they used on Hoth months earlier, tying up the AT-AT's legs with their tow cables. Wedge and the Rogues pulled it off, allowing Madine's forces to deploy and to begin assaulting the Imperial emplacements. From the same spot in the wreckage that the AT-ATs emerged, a force of about 30 all-terrain personal transports were marching to assist the Imperial stormtroopers dug in on the beachhead. Recognizing that those AT-PTs would rip the infantry apart once they got there, the Rogues switched craft yet again, this time to Y-Wing bombers, and carpeted the area, assuring the safety of the Allied infantry. While providing air support for the infantry, the last task for the Rogues was to pierce a hole in the Star Destroyer's hull, allowing Madine's commandos to infiltrate and retrieve the computer core. Following successful exfiltration of Madine's commandos with escort from Rogue Squadron, Vader's flagship, the Executor, arrived in system to firstly make it look like the Empire was very concerned about the loss of this particular bit of data enough to send Vader himself, and secondly to collect Skywalker, who Vader had just learned escaped captivity during the battle. Though the Battle of Kothless was ultimately set up so that the Alliance could retrieve the Death Star 2 plans and fall into Palpatine's trap at Endor, the bravery of Rogue Squadron and Madine's commandos at the battle would be celebrated as one of the first turning points in the Galactic Civil War that led to the Emperor's demise. This transmission was commissioned on Patreon by Wirefox Terrier. If you have any suggestions for future transmissions, don't be afraid to drop a comment. Special thanks to my patrons Wildcat144, Zexend, JTrips1997, Wirefox Terrier, AJ Can't Think of a Good Pun Right Now, Sim the Despot, Matt Batten, Hawk2274, Cal Scarata, Angry Mutt, Chris Evans, Mayo4, Epileptic Zebra, and Yisnak Jr. If you'd like to support this channel and perhaps even commission your own video topic, please visit my Patreon to find out how. Link is in the description. In the meantime, keep your comm channels open for future transmissions, and don't forget to subscribe. Tad Larkin, out.